The single mom waitress said I'm fine. The mafia boss ordered 3 men to follow her home. The air at Azucar and Lime was heavy with humidity, clinging to the skin like cheap perfume. It was the scent of little Marisol, a sticky mix of lime zest, spilled beer, and the faint, salty tang of the nearby bay. Eliza Navarro felt the grit of it, the exhaustion of the double shift settling into her bones. At 26, her hands were not soft, they were calloused, the palms hardened from the weight of trays, the knuckles red from industrial dish soap. She was cornered by the POS system when the manager, Brett Klein, slid up beside her. He smelled of stale cigarettes and the hair gel he used too much of. "Table 7, sassy," he hissed, his eyes avoiding hers, fixed instead on the glowing screen. "The tourists, they use the QR menu." Eliza kept her gaze neutral. "What about them?" "They need the Fiesta surcharge added, $95. Eliza stopped wiping a glass. She looked at the check. "Brett, there are only 4 of them. The menu says the fee is for parties of 8 or more." "They're tourists. They're drunk. They won't read the fine print," he snapped. "The QR system is flexible. Just add the line item. They'll pay." Eliza shook her head, the motion small, tight. She saw her daughter, Juniper, sitting at their tiny kitchen table, her 6-year-old face serious. "Mommy," Juniper had said just last week, "you told me we never lie to get money." "I can't, Brett." His face darkened. "Don't be difficult, Eliza. We all have to make a living." "This isn't making a living. It's stealing." "It's a fee." His hand shot out, clamping down on her forearm. His grip was surprisingly strong, his fingers digging into the muscle, pinching. "You're going to add it." Eliza winced, trying to pull her arm free without dropping the glass. The pressure was intense, a sharp, bruising pain. "I'm fine," she said. The words a strained whisper. "Let go of me. I'm not doing it." He leaned in closer. "You're broke, sweetheart. Don't pretend you're fine." From the elevated VIP room, the main dining floor looked like an aquarium. Santino Vega watched the scene through the one-way glass, his whiskey untouched. He was a silent partner in this place, a line item on a spreadsheet, but he came here because he liked the noise. Tonight, he saw the silence. He saw the shift in his manager's posture, the way he leaned into the waitress. He saw the girl flinch, her shoulders hunching. He saw her try to pull away. He didn't need to hear the words. He recognized the ugly shape of a small man using what little power he had. Santino didn't reach for his phone. He didn't signal the man standing by his door. He simply rose, the heavy oak chair sliding back without a sound. He pushed the reinforced door open. The sudden hush of the dining room's noise being cut off by the door's seal, and then the return of it as he stepped out, made a few heads turn. He walked past the bar. He didn't hurry. His shoes made no sound on the tile. He stopped 5 feet away from them. "Get your hands off her!" The entire lobby was still. The clatter of plates from the kitchen window stopped. Brett Klein went rigid. He knew that voice. He dropped Eliza's arm as if it were burning, spinning to face the owner. "Mr. Vega, we were just—" Eliza rubbed her arm, her face burning with a mixture of shame and relief. Brett's panic was visible. He tried to recover, grabbing Eliza's elbow again, this time trying to pull her toward the dark service corridor. "The one place without cameras. This is just an employee issue, sir. I'm handling it." Santino didn't even look at him. His gaze moved past Brett to the shadows near the entrance. He tilted his head, a fractional movement. Then he snapped his fingers. The sound was sharp, like a breaking twig. 3 men materialized. They hadn't been there a second ago. Now they separated, forming a loose, impassive triangle that cut Brett off from both the exit and the hallway. Maceo, the driver, built like a fire hydrant, his hands clasped loosely in front of him, Brick, tall and serene, adjusting the cuff of his linen shirt, and Tully, who looked more like a college student than muscle, his eyes already scanning the room's technology. Santino's gaze finally settled on Eliza. He saw the red marks on her skin, the way she refused to meet his eyes. "End your shift. Go home." He held her gaze for a beat. "I'll check the books." Eliza just stared, her throat too tight to speak. She nodded once. Santino turned his back on her, a clear dismissal. He addressed his men, his voice dropping so low only they could hear. "Follow her. 2-block distance. Don't let anyone touch her." Eliza fled. She grabbed her purse from the staff room, her thin sweater, and pushed out the kitchen's side exit. She didn't wait for her tip out. She was mortified. She hadn't asked for a rescue. Being protected by a man like Santino Vega felt like being marked, like being owned. She pulled the sleeve of her sweater down, hiding the angry red imprint of Brett's fingers, and hurried into the humid night. She had no idea she had just walked away from a simple shakedown and into a sophisticated digital war. 2 blocks away, Maceo eased the black sedan into traffic. The car was silent, invisible. He kept his distance, tracking the small, fast-moving figure in the worn-out sweater. "She's scared," Maceo noted, his voice a low rumble. Brick, in the passenger seat, watched the mirrors. "She's angry. It's not the same thing." He watched a blue pickup truck take the same left turn Eliza had. "We got a potential shadow." In the back, bathed in the pale glow of a tablet, Tully was already working. "Forget the truck. Brick. He just pulled over. Look at this." He tapped the screen. The boss was right. The QR menu at Azucar is dirty. "How dirty?" Maceo asked. "It's a phantom overlay. The menu links to a real processor, but it forks the transactions. Anything flagged as a surcharge or party fee gets bounced." "To where?" Brick asked. "A payment gateway called BayPay Ghost. I've never heard of it. The money is routing through 3 countries in half a second and then vanishing. This isn't one greasy manager. This is a network." Back in the VIP room, Santino Vega stood in the dark, looking down at the restaurant floor. Brett was sweating, being quietly questioned by Brick. Santino ignored them. He was thinking about the waitress's eyes, defiant, tired. He pulled out his phone. He didn't dial a number. He pressed a secure contact. "Audit all transactions tonight," he ordered. "Every restaurant in the portfolio. I want the source of BayPay Ghost, and I want to know who is standing behind Brett." Tully worked in the spectrum of blue light, in the back of the sedan, parked in an alley that smelled like old fish. He was a conduit. The BayPay Ghost protocol was slippery, designed to fool restaurant auditors, not a man who lived in the architecture of the dark web. He traced the packet headers. The money didn't just disappear, it morphed. It hit the fake gateway, split into 99 smaller transactions, tumbled through a decentralized crypto mixer, and reformed in a holding account. The account belonged to a business entity, Saltworks Collective. "Got it," Tully said into his comms. Saltworks, Santino's voice, remote and clear from his own location. "It's a ghost kitchen network, or it pretends to be. They have addresses in 4 different industrial parks. No storefronts, no walk-in traffic. They only do late-night delivery orders. They're buying massive quantities of industrial-grade olive oil and flour, things that spoil or get used up quick." There was a pause. "They're washing the cash," Santino concluded. "The stolen QR money buys fake inventory. Saltworks delivers nothing, claims the cost of goods sold, and the money is clean." While Tully navigated the digital underworld, Eliza climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment in Harbor Pines. The hallway air was thick with the smell of old curry from 3B and the faint, sharp ammonia of cat urine from 4C. She unlocked 3 deadbolts. The apartment was quiet. Juniper was safe. Thank God, at her neighbors, Mrs. Lords for the night. Eliza opened the refrigerator. The small bulb flickered, illuminating the reality she worked 80 hours a week to hide. Half a gallon of milk, 2 days from expiring, a plastic tub of margarine, a single, mealy-looking apple, a can of pinto beans. She slid down the kitchen cabinet, her back pressing against the peeling veneer, and sat on the worn linoleum floor. Her phone buzzed. A text from the daycare center. Payment overdue. Please remit. Eliza rubbed her temples, the phantom ache in her arm where Brett had grabbed her flaring up. She typed, her callous thumb moving stiffly. I am so sorry. I get paid Friday. I will have the full amount by next week. I promise. She hit send, hating the desperation, the weakness in the words. Her phone rang almost immediately. Not the daycare. An unknown number. She hesitated, her heart quickening, then answered. Eliza Navarro. The voice was male, digitally muffled, flat, emotionless. Who is this? A friend. Someone who thinks you should focus on your job. Stop making things difficult for Mr. Klein. Eliza's stomach turned to ice. She stood up too quickly, feeling dizzy. I don't know what you're talking about. The QR codes, the surcharges. You're fine with them. You're a team player. Understand? No, she said, her voice small. The flat voice sighed, a synthetic puff of air. That's a shame. You have a daughter. Right, Juniper, cute kid. The Suncoast Licensing Authority takes child welfare very seriously. They hear about a mother working unstable hours, associating with problems. They might want to inspect her daycare, maybe her home. The line clicked. Eliza dropped the phone as if it were burning. Suncoast Licensing Authority. She had never heard of it. It didn't matter. The threat was clear. They were threatening her daughter. Santino listened to the recording of the call 2 minutes later. Tully had already looped into her phone provider's database. Sweep the neighborhood, Santino ordered. Maceo, eyes on the building. Brick, the truck. Outside Harbor Pines, Maceo watched the fourth-floor lights. He was parked 3 blocks down, invisible in the shadow of a banyan tree. I see her shadow. She's pacing. He scanned the street, his gaze methodical. The blue pickup is still here. Same one from the restaurant, short-term rental plates. Been parked for 2 hours. Eliza, shaking, grabbed her thin sweater and ran. She couldn't stay in the apartment. She ran to the 24/7 convenience store on the corner, the one with the flickering neon sign, the payphone, mounted outside by the ice machine, smelled faintly of urine. She dug a quarter from her pocket and dialed the number Santino's man had slipped her at the restaurant. He answered on the first ring, Eliza. They called me. She was breathing too fast, her words tumbling out. They threatened my daughter. They mentioned her name. They mentioned a Suncoast Licensing Authority. It's a fake agency. Santino's voice was calm, a solid object in her storm of panic. It doesn't exist. It's a scare tactic. It felt real. Where are you? I'm at a payphone. I won't give you my address. I already have it. Eliza, my men are outside your building right now. She felt a new, different wave of fear, cold and invasive. You're watching me. I'm protecting you. The charges at the restaurant. Did Brett ever make you add them? No, but I saw things, hidden charges on receipts, ever since we switched the system. I thought it was just Brett, but I saw him make Ivy Tran sign something, a paper. He said it was an error adjustment for the QR system. He yelled at her. She was crying. There was a beat of silence on the line. Ivy Tran. Good, stay inside. Lock your doors. They won't touch Juniper. I promise you that. The line went dead. In the sedan, Brick finished talking to his own contact. VIN number on the pickup is registered to a shell company in Blue Lattice Port. Untraceable. It doesn't need to be traceable, Santino said over their comms. It just needs to be watched. Tully, meanwhile, had finalized the diagram of the operation. He sent it to Santino's encrypted tablet. It was simple. It was brilliant. Here's the model, Boss, Tully explained. The customer scans the QR. The overlay redirects the payment to the BayPay Ghost portal. The surcharge is skimmed off and sent to a cold wallet. The rest of the payment goes to the restaurant. It's invisible to the customer and the restaurant's daily books. And the cold wallet, Santino asked. It funds the Saltworks Collective. They buy fictional truckloads of high-turnover ingredients. They generate invoices. The Saltworks invoices look like legitimate expenses. The stolen money is now clean revenue. Santino stared at the diagram. He looked at the name Eliza had given him. Ivy Tran. Ivy Tran is the lever, Santino said, more to himself than to Tully. Brett forced her to sign off on the error. She's compromised. She's the witness. Eliza was back in her apartment, the chain on the door. She was staring at the can of pinto beans, her stomach aching. Her personal cell phone rang, Santino's number. Tomorrow, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. You go to work, you clock in, you act like nothing happened, you talk to Ivy, but you leave the rest to me. Eliza closed her eyes. She thought of Juniper. She thought of the man's flat, dead voice. I'm fine, she whispered again. This time, the tremble in her voice was unmistakable. Santino heard it, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something cold and unfamiliar stir inside him, a quiet, precise rage. The morning shift at Azucar and Lime began with a low, anxious thrum. Brett Klein was conspicuously absent, replaced by a day manager Eliza had never seen before, a stiff woman who avoided everyone's eyes. The staff whispered, Eliza just worked. She kept her head down, refilled coffees, and tried to ignore the deep, pulsing ache in her forearm. She didn't see him arrive. One moment, Section 3 was empty. The next, Santino Vega was sitting at a two-top by the window, the one that caught the harsh morning light. He wasn't dressed like a Mr. Vega. He wore a simple, dark polo shirt and gray trousers. No suit, no guards. He looked like any other customer. Until you met his eyes. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. She picked up a carafe of coffee, her hand steady only through sheer force of will, and walked over. Good morning, she said, her voice a dry croak. Coffee. Please, Santino said. He didn't look up at her face. His gaze was fixed on her left arm as she poured. The sleeve of her uniform shirt had ridden up, revealing the mottled, ugly bruise just above her wrist. It was a dark plum color, with the distinct impression of 4 fingers. His eyes lingered. It was not a glance. It was a long, focused, unblinking moment of study. He watched the color drain from her face, watched her hand tremble just slightly. She quickly finished pouring and yanked her sleeve down. Will you be eating anything, she asked, her professionalism a thin shield. Just the coffee. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers fully. They were dark, unreadable. And the check. She nodded, retrieved the check, and brought it back. He placed a $20 bill on the small black tray, far too much for a $3 coffee. As she reached for it, he laid a small, folded piece of paper beside the bill. His fingers brushed the tray, but not her hand. Thank you, Eliza. She walked away, the small square of paper burning a hole in her apron pocket. She didn't read it until she was in the relative privacy of the wait station. Tonight, at Parking Lot 3, 5 minutes. Parking Lot 3 was the gravel overflow lot behind the neighboring seafood market. It was lit by 2 tall, buzzing sodium lamps that cast a sick yellow-orange glow on everything. The air was thick with the smell of the ocean and old fish. She was there at 10 p.m., right after her shift. She told herself she was only there to tell him she didn't need his help. She was there to set a boundary, but she was there. She clutched her thin jacket closed against the damp wind. His sedan was already there, parked in the darkest corner, engine off. He was not in it. He was leaning against the trunk, a shadow among shadows. He pushed off the car as she approached, and she stopped 10 feet away. You came, he stated. It wasn't a question. I'm not in trouble. Mr. Vega, I don't need... I know. He cut her off, but his voice was quiet. He turned and opened his trunk. For a heart-stopping second, she thought he was reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a black nylon bag, a first aid kit. He placed it on the trunk lid and unzipped it. Inside were sterile bandages, antiseptic wipes, and small tubes of ointment. The man who did this, Santino said, his back still mostly to her. He won't be back at Azucar. You fired him. It's being handled. He turned, holding a small antiseptic wipe and a gauze pad. He held them out, not toward her, but in his open palm. He looked at her arm, then at her face. "May I?" The quiet question hung in the salty air. He was asking permission. He was a man who, she suspected, rarely asked for anything. She hesitated. Trusting him felt dangerous, like stepping onto thin ice, but the memory of his gentle, quiet Vietnamese words in the diner, spoken to protect her, warred with her fear. She gave a single, jerky nod. He stepped closer, into the pool of yellow light. He was taller than she'd realized. He didn't take her arm. Instead, he held his hand out, palm up, waiting for her to give it to him. She slowly uncurled her fingers from her jacket and placed her forearm in his hand. His grip was firm, but infinitely gentle. His thumb rested just below the bruise, his skin warm against hers. He was careful, his movements economical and precise as he tore open the wipe. "This might sting," he said, his voice a low murmur. He dabbed at the broken skin. She flinched, not from the sting of the alcohol, but from the touch itself. No one had touched her with this kind of focused, impersonal care in years. It was not the hurried, distracted touch of a mother, or the grasping, selfish touch of a man. It was just gentle. It felt foreign. It felt like an intimacy she had no right to. He worked in silence, cleaning the abrasion, his dark head bent to his task. She could see the line of his jaw, the way his dark eyelashes rested against his cheek. He was so still. "Why?" she whispered. He paused, his fingers still resting on her skin. He didn't look up. "I don't like bullies." He smoothed a small amount of soothing salve over the bruise, his thumb brushing her skin in a slow circle. She suppressed a shiver. "I protect honest people. My people." "I'm not your people," she said, though the words lacked conviction. "You're an honest person," he finished, laying a small square of gauze over the spot. "But you set the boundaries. I'll respect them." He stepped back, zipping the kit, the space between them suddenly feeling cold again. She pulled her sleeve down, the new bandage a stark white square under the fabric. "They threatened my daughter." The words just fell out, torn from her. "My ex-husband, Caleb North, he skips his child support, but he just filed for custody. He says I'm unstable." Santino went rigid. The quiet gentleness of the man treating her arm vanished, replaced by the stillness of the man in the VIP room. He turned to face her fully, his eyes now hard, the yellow light catching the sharp planes of his face. "He's using the situation at the restaurant," Eliza rushed on, her voice shaking. "He'll say I'm mixed up in whatever this is. He'll take Juniper from me." Santino listened, his face a mask of stone. When she finished, the silence stretched, broken only by the buzz of the lamp and the distant cry of a gull. Finally, he spoke. His voice was no longer gentle. It was flat, cold, and absolute. "Anyone who threatens a child, I consider an enemy. Against all reason, against all her better judgment." Eliza felt a small, strange laugh bubble in her chest. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated relief. It wasn't even a laugh, more like a sharp exhale. She smiled, the first real smile in days. As she did, a strand of dark hair, whipped loose by the wind, blew across her face, sticking to her cheek. Santino raised his hand. He moved to brush it away, his fingers outstretched. Then, an inch from her skin, he stopped. He froze. His hand hovered in the air between them, his gaze asking the question his lips did not. She looked at his hand, then at his eyes. She saw the question. She saw his restraint, and slowly, deliberately, she leaned her head forward just a fraction, until her cheek met his fingers. His touch was feather-light. He tucked the strand behind her ear, his knuckles grazing her temple. Her breath hitched. He dropped his hand. 5 minutes, he said, his voice slightly rough. He got in his car. She turned and walked away, not looking back. The gravel crunched under her feet. She heard his car door close, the engine start. He didn't drive away until she had rounded the corner, safely out of the dark lot. An unspoken appointment, a silent promise, now hung heavy in the salty air between them. Tully found the cancer. It was a single container at Blue Lattice Port, listed on the manifest as frozen seafood supplies and leased to a shell company that did not exist. He called it Ghost Dock 14. It was the physical hub for the Saltworks Collective. From a secure laptop in his unmarked van, he pinged the router inside. It was active, and it was transmitting data to a white delivery truck that had just left the back alley of a zoo car in Lime. "He's moving," Tully's voice said, clean and digital, in Santino's earpiece. "The truck from the restaurant. It's heading your way. He's crossing the Cauba Bridge now." In the back of Maceo's sedan, parked in the shadow of a rusted gantry crane, Eliza felt her stomach clench. "That's Brett," she whispered. "It has to be." Santino sat beside her, a statue of pure stillness. He had argued against this, vehemently. He had told her it was too dangerous, that she had done enough, but she had been immovable. "You don't understand," she had pleaded, her voice fierce, back in the safety of a daytime meeting. "My ex-husband is painting me as an unstable, reckless mother. Your men watching me. That helps his case. I need something to fight back. I need proof that I am the one stopping a crime, not participating in one. I need it for the custody hearing. For Juniper." He had looked at her for a long time, his eyes searching hers for any sign of wavering. He found none. He had only seen the same desperate, stubborn loyalty he recognized in his own mirror. He had broken his oldest rule. He had let her in. "Maceo," Santino said, his voice low. "Lights off." Maceo killed the engine. The car went dark, plunging them into the industrial twilight of the port. The air smelled of diesel fuel, low tide, and hot metal. Brick was in the van with Tully, a quarter-mile away, watching the only access road. "I have the bread." Brick's voice crackled, calm and deep. "He's not leaving the way he came in." The white truck rumbled past their position, its headlights cutting through the gloom, and parked beside Container 14. The engine idled for a moment, then cut. Silence. "We move on foot, Mad," Santino said. "Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say. Get the pictures, and we leave. We do not engage." Eliza nodded, her hand gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles ached. She had turned the flash off, disabled the shutter sound. They slipped out of the sedan, Maceo melting into the shadows to watch their backs. Santino moved with a fluid, predatory grace, his feet making no sound on the broken asphalt. Eliza tried to copy him, sticking to the deepest shadows, her sneakers grating loudly in her own ears. They found a position in a narrow gap between two massive, refrigerated containers. They had a clear view. Brett Klein climbed out of the truck, and he looked terrified, his movements jerky as he scanned the empty yard. He went to the back of the truck and pulled out a small, silver metal box. A side door on Container 14 slid open. A man stepped out. He was thick, wearing jeans and a stained t-shirt, but his presence was heavy. A gaudy silver bracelet shaped like a fish skeleton, a marlin gleamed on his wrist. "Ray Marlin Ochoa," Santino breathed, so low Eliza barely heard it. She raised her phone. Her hands were shaking. "Steady, steady, Eliza." Brett held the box out. "Here it is, all of it. Now, you tell your boss." "Shut up, Brett," Marlin sneered, snatching the box. "You just keep the pipeline open." Eliza's finger pressed the screen. Click, click. She got it. The handoff. Brett's face, pale with sweat. Marlin's face, sneering. The silver box caught between them. And then the world exploded in white light. A motion sensor floodlight directly above them snapped on, bathing them in blinding, artificial daylight. A harsh, electronic alarm began to blare. "Crap!" Brett yelled, dropping to the ground. "We're blown!" Maceo's voice yelled in Santino's ear. Marlin dropped the box and pulled something dark from his waistband. "We got company!" he roared. as two more men spilled from the container. "Go!" Santino grabbed Eliza's hand and pulled. They ran. They were in a maze of steel, the alarm screaming, rebounding off the metal walls. Shouts echoed behind them. Eliza's lungs burned. Santino was pulling her, his grip like a steel band on her wrist. They rounded a corner, headed for the dark gap where Maceo was waiting. Her foot came down on something slick, a patch of grease or fish oil, and her legs went out from under her. She fell, her phone skittering across the pavement. She looked up. One of Marlon's men was right there, rounding the corner, his face split in a grimace. She never even saw Santino move. He released her, spun, and met the man, not with a fist, but with his shoulder. A solid, brutal impact that sent the man crashing into the container wall. Then Santino was back, yanking her up. He didn't just pull her to her feet, he pulled her against him, shoving her behind his body and pinning her flat against the cold, corrugated steel. His body was a shield, his front pressed tight to her back. Her senses were on fire. She could feel the solid wall of his chest, the heat radiating from him. The alarm was deafening, but all she could hear was the harsh sound of his breathing right next to her ear, a hot puff of air against her cheek. She was trapped between the cold, unyielding metal and the hot, living reality of him. Just as the second man rounded the corner, a deafening train horn blared from the tracks bordering the port. The ground vibrated. The sound was a physical blow, swallowing the alarm, the shouts, everything. Santino used the noise. He grabbed her phone from the ground with one hand, shoved it into her pocket, and put his mouth to her ear. Now. He spun them out of the gap and they sprinted the last 50 yards. Maceo had the car door open, the engine already rumbling. They dove in, Santino pushing her onto the floor in the back and covering her with his own body as Maceo stomped on the gas. The car fishtailed on the gravel and shot out of the port, just as Brick's van, lights off, rolled into the access road to block pursuit. They were 2 miles away, speeding down the highway, before Santino moved off her. Eliza gasped for air, her heart feeling like it would break through her ribs. She was alive. She was clutching the phone in her pocket. "Tully," Santino said, his voice perfectly calm as he sat up. "Did Brick get it?" "Affirmative," Tully replied. "Marlon dropped it when you hit his man. Brick had the package. I'm inside it now." "What is it?" Eliza asked, pulling herself onto the seat. "A master drive," Tully said. "Encrypted, but the encryption is cheap." A moment later, Santino's phone lit up. A file transfer. "I'm sending you the list now. It's not just Azucar. It's Boss. It's 42 locations. Restaurants, bodegas, tourist traps, all across South Dade, all running the Bay Pay Ghost." Another file appeared, a calendar entry. "What is the Shore Hope Gala?" Tully asked. "It's a huge charity event," Eliza said, leaning over to see the phone, "for the Children's Hospital. It's this weekend." "They're running the scam on charity donations, too," Santino said, his voice turning to ice. "Who?" Eliza asked. "Who is at the top of this?" "Tracing the master wallet," Tully said, the sound of rapid typing. "It's shielded, but got it. The account is registered to a holding company, one name on the charter, Wesley Paxton." The name landed in the car with a thud. "Paxton the developer," Eliza whispered. "He's sponsoring the gala. He's a city hero." "He's a thief," Santino said. "We have to go to the police," Eliza said, her voice shaking. "We have the pictures. We have the drive." Santino shook his head, looking at the city lights flash past. No real cops. "What, why not?" "Tully, send her the other file." Santino's phone lit up again. Eliza looked. It was a list of names. "Paxton's donations," Santino explained. "Not to charities, to campaigns. He owns half the city council and all of the Metropolitan Commerce Bureau." "The what?" "And the agency that signs off on every development contract in Miami. If we hand this drive to the police, it vanishes. The box vanishes. And you." He turned, his dark eyes finding hers in the dim light. "You vanish." Eliza stared at the list of names. She thought of the men at the dock. She thought of the flat, dead voice on the phone. She thought of Juniper. Her fear didn't vanish. It crystallized. It turned cold, hard, and sharp. She looked at the picture on her phone, the one that could cost her everything, or win her everything. She gripped the door handle, her knuckles white. "Then we don't go to the cops," she said, her voice steady. "Then we expose him to the whole city." The first blow landed not in a dark alley, but on cheap printer paper. It was a court summons, delivered by a board process server to her apartment door. Emergency petition for temporary guardianship. Eliza's hands shook as she read the legalese. Caleb North, her ex-husband, had filed. His reasoning was stated in cold, stark type. The child's mother has demonstrated a pattern of reckless endangerment by knowingly associating with known organized crime figures. Stapled to the back was the proof. It was one of the photos from the dock, grainy and blown up, but it had been artfully cropped. It didn't show the handoff, or Brett, or the chaos. It just showed Eliza, her face pale with fear, standing impossibly close to Santino Vega, who was half turned toward her, his body shielding hers in the dark, grainy light. It looked less like a rescue and more like a rendezvous. It looked damning. The second blow arrived the same afternoon, this one at the restaurant, a certified letter addressed to the proprietor, Azúcar and Lime. It was from the Suncoast Licensing Authority. The day manager read it aloud, her voice trembling. "We have received numerous credible complaints regarding systemic payment violations and fraudulent QR code implementation. All operations are to be suspended pending a full audit. Failure to comply will result in permanent closure." It was signed with an illegible scrawl, Brett's handiwork. The threat was no longer just against her. It was against everyone she worked with. That evening, Ivy Tran found Eliza in the staff locker room. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "He made me... Eliza," she whispered, her hands twisting the hem of her apron. "Brett, he came to my house. He said I signed the QR error adjustments. He said if I didn't back him up, Suncoast would foreclose on my house. My mother lives with me." Eliza felt her anger die, replaced by a cold, weary understanding. She wasn't the only one with a child or a parent to protect. She put her hand on Ivy's arm. "I don't blame you, Ivy. He threatened your family." "What are we going to do?" Ivy sobbed. "You're going to be a witness," Eliza said, her voice quiet but firm. "When the time comes, you're going to tell the truth." Santino found her sitting at an empty table in the closed restaurant, staring at the summons. He had advised her to stop working the night shifts, to lay low until the custody hearing, to give Caleb no more ammunition. She hadn't listened. She had clocked in at 4 p.m. on the dot. "This is what he does," Eliza said, not looking at him. She slid the crumpled papers across the table. He finds a weak spot and he presses until it breaks. Santino read the petition. His face gave nothing away. "My lawyers will handle this." "No." She finally looked up, her eyes bright with a dangerous, brittle energy. "Your lawyers, your name, that's what he's using against me. Using you makes me look guilty. It makes me look like his." She hated the word, but it was the truth. "I'm not hiding. I'm doing my job. I am working, and I am going to fight him with the truth." He watched her, the simple, powerful set of her jaw. She was not a woman who could be protected by being hidden. She could only be protected by winning. "Then we win," he said. He sat down opposite her. Brick has been busy. While Eliza had been fighting her legal battles, Brick had been dismantling Paxton's. The Shore Hope Gala was not just a vanity project. Paxton needs a zoning variance from the Bureau of Maritime Commerce, Brick reported, his voice calm over Santino's secure line. He wants to build his new high-rises on a protected mangrove shoreline. The gala is his payoff. He's not just raising money for the charity. He's raising it from the charity with the ghost QRs, and then funneling it to the commissioners. He had the list, the names of the public officials on Paxton's payroll. While Brick found the why, Santino continued. Tully built the how. Tully, from his van, had designed a masterpiece. It was a clone of the gala's official donation portal, a perfect digital twin. When Paxton makes his big speech, Tully's voice chimed in, he'll ask everyone to donate using the QR code on the main screen. That's his code, but I'll be in their network. When he scans his own phone to make the first donation, he won't be triggering the thank you graphic. He'll be triggering my overlay. The entire gala is going to see a live feed of their donations routing directly to the Saltworks Collective. The plan was set. All the pieces were in place. Santino looked at Eliza. The pressure was getting to her. He could see the exhaustion in the fragile skin under her eyes, the tremor in her hands. There's one condition, he said. The gala will be unpredictable. The moment it gets hot, the moment Paxton's men move, you leave. You don't look back. You get out. Maceo will have a car waiting. Eliza met his gaze. I understand. She nodded. He saw the nod, but he also saw her eyes. She had no intention of running. The next day, Maceo took a different assignment. He sat in his sedan across from Valencia Primary, a public elementary school. He watched a 6-year-old girl with dark braided hair play tag during recess. He met with her teacher, a young woman named Miss Alva, and gave her a prepaid burner phone, for emergencies only. He then sat for an hour with Mrs. Lourdes, Eliza's neighbor, explaining the new high-security lock he was installing on her door, free of charge. He showed the kind, elderly woman a picture of Caleb. This man is not allowed near her, not for any reason. The protection was invisible but absolute. The night before the gala, the pressure became a physical thing, a weight in Eliza's throat that made it hard to breathe. She stood on the tiny, rust-stained balcony of her apartment, gripping the cool metal railing. The wind from the bay was relentless, carrying the smell of salt and diesel, stinging her lips. She was fighting on 3 fronts, against Caleb for her daughter, against Paxton for her job, and against the city itself for her integrity. She felt small, breakable, and utterly alone. A sound behind her. She didn't jump. She had known he would come. Santino stepped out onto the balcony. He didn't speak. He didn't offer comfort or a plan. He simply stood beside her, his shoulder an inch from hers, and looked out at the same dark, indifferent skyline. He stood there as she trembled. He stood there as the tightness in her chest finally, agonizingly, began to ease. He stood there, sharing the silence, a grounding force in the chaos. He stayed until her breathing, which had been shallow and fast, finally deepened until it matched the slow, steady rhythm of the sea. The storm broke with a sudden, violent crack. The lights in Azucar and Lime didn't just flicker, they died. A split second of pure blackness. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing the kitchen in a weak, greenish-white glow. Outside, the rain was no longer a drizzle. It was a tropical deluge, a deafening drumroll against the metal roof. Eliza was soaked. She'd been hauling in the patio furniture when the sky opened up. Now she stood shivering in the prep area, her thin uniform plastered to her skin. She heard a heavy, metallic rattle. Santino was at the back entrance, pulling a dry, dark sweatshirt from a duffel bag in his car. He must have been sitting out there, watching. He walked in, shaking the rain from his hair, and the small, emergency-lit kitchen suddenly felt impossible of its name. The storm raged. The lights in Azucar and Lime didn't just flicker, they died. A split second of pure blackness. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing the kitchen in a weak, greenish-white glow. Outside, the rain was no longer a drizzle. It was a tropical deluge, a deafening drumroll against the metal roof. Eliza was soaked. She'd been hauling in the patio furniture when the sky opened up. Now she stood shivering in the prep area, her thin uniform plastered to her skin. She heard a heavy, metallic rattle. Santino was at the back entrance, pulling a dry, dark sweatshirt from a duffel bag in his car. He must have been sitting out there, watching. He walked in, shaking the rain from his hair, and the small, emergency-lit kitchen suddenly felt impossibly crowded. He didn't say anything. He just held out the sweatshirt. She looked at it, then at him, her arms wrapped around her own chest. "You're freezing, Eliza." But she was frozen for another reason. He stepped closer. He didn't try to hand her the shirt. Instead, he shook it out and held it open. A clear invitation to turn around. She did, slowly. He draped the thick, warm cotton over her shoulders. His hands lingered, settling on her shoulder blades. Even through the damp fabric of her uniform, his touch was hot. He didn't just drop his hands. He rubbed, a slow, firm motion, once. A gesture of pure, uncomplicated comfort. A gesture that was meant to warm. It did. A jolt, sharp and warm, shot straight through her. She didn't pull away. She didn't flinch. She just looked straight ahead at the stainless steel refrigerator, at her own pale, blurry reflection in the metal. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Either of us. Not tonight." "Where else would I be?" His voice was a low rumble, right behind her. "They're painting you as the devil, Santino, and me as his... whatever." She turned around then, clutching the sweatshirt closed at her throat. "Tomorrow, at that gala, I'm terrified. Not of them. I'm terrified of losing. I'm terrified that they'll take my daughter and that I'll be the one who caused it." He looked at her, his face half in shadow, half in the pale green emergency light. The usual hardness was gone, replaced by something raw. "And you know what I'm afraid of," he said, his voice barely audible over the drumming rain. "I'm afraid you're right. I'm afraid they're right, that I'm not a man, just the shadow my father cast, that I pull everything I get close to down into the dark with me." She stared at him. This was the most honest thing she had ever heard him say. He was afraid of exactly what she was afraid of. The wind howled, and a sheet of water slammed against the metal back door, forcing it open an inch with a loud crash. Cold, wet air flooded the kitchen. Santino moved, not to the door, but to the large, rolling steel shutter that covered the service bay. He grabbed the chain, and with a loud, grinding rattle, he pulled it down. The sound of the rain was suddenly cut off, muffled, distant. The world shrank. It was just the two of them. The kitchen was no longer a room. It was a cocoon, dim and warm, smelling of coffee, rain, and his faint, clean scent. The only light was the single green bulb above the sink, which cast a thin, soft-edged light across her cheekbones. She hadn't realized she'd walked toward him. She was only a foot away now. He was so still. This was the man who had ordered men to follow her, the man who had faced down thugs at the dock, the man who was, by all accounts, a criminal. And he was the only person who had ever made her feel safe. The contradiction was too much, the fear for tomorrow, the relief of this moment. She was so tired of being strong. She made the first move. It was small. She lifted her hand. She didn't touch his face. She didn't grab his shirt. She just rested her palm flat against his chest, over his heart. His entire body went rigid. Beneath her hand, she felt it, the sudden, hard, rapid slam of his heartbeat. It was not calm. It was not controlled. It was a wild thing, trapped, and it was beating as fast as her own. His eyes searched hers, black in the dim light. He covered her hand with his skin calloused and hot. His voice was rough. "Eliza! Chakchu! Are you sure?" She didn't trust her voice. She just nodded once, her throat tight. Her breath came fast, a small cloud in the cool air. That was all he needed. He didn't crush her against him. He was still, even now, agonizingly gentle. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His other hand came up, not to her waist, but to her back. His fingers splayed wide, a solid, supportive pressure. He kissed her. It was not a kiss of polite affection. It was a kiss of deep, slow, volcanic fire. It was a kiss that had been held back for weeks, a kiss that tasted of rain and salt and a desperate, shared fear. His lips were firm. Sure, moving against hers with a patience that belied the hammering she still felt beneath her own hand. He lifted her, just slightly, just enough to bring her mouth fully to his, to take the weight off her feet so she wasn't leaning. So they were just there. She responded by gripping the arm of his shirt, her fingers tightening, her entire body, which had been coiled tight for days, finally, letting go. Her shoulders dropped. She melted into him. They whispered against each other's lips, the words a broken exhale, a shared breath. "Here," she breathed. "With you," he answered. The rain and the world outside disappeared. There was only the sound of their breathing, mingled and uneven. The camera would have seen nothing but shadow. It would have pulled back, to focus on the steam from the hot water pipe fogging the small window. It would have shown the warmth of their bodies creating a small, clear patch on the otherwise cold, misted stainless steel wall. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. He didn't let her go. He just rested his forehead against hers. They stood like that for a long time. Later, they were sitting on the floor, their backs against a row of inox steel cabinets, sharing a stale bread roll Maceo had left in the car. They were smiling, the tired, bone-weary smiles of soldiers before the final battle. It was not a moment of passion, but one of deep, trusting affection. Eliza took a bite, her gaze distant. "If I panic tomorrow," she said, her voice quiet, "when I see the cameras and the lawyers, when I think of Juniper, if I look like I'm going to run, remind me." "Remind you of what?" She looked at him, her eyes clear in the green light. "Remind me that I was terrified tonight, and I still chose to be brave." Santino took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. He looked down at their joined hands. "I'll carry it, to remind us both," he said, his voice a vow. The Shore Hope Gala was a jewel strung on the neck of the bay. White tents billowed on the main pier, lit from within, glowing against the dark water. A salsa orchestra played, the brass section bright and sharp, cutting through the murmur of Miami's elite. Wesley Paxton was the king of this fabricated world. He stood on the outdoor stage in a flawless tuxedo, his tanned face benevolent, his silver hair catching the stage lights. He spoke of our bay, of our shared responsibility, of the green future of the Vin. He was a lie, and he was surrounded. Cut. Maceo stood by the valet stand, his chauffeur's cap pulled low. He was a statue of quiet menace, his eyes not on the stage, but on the exits. He was the escape route. Cut. Brick, in the black shirt and cargo pants of a stagehand, stood in the wings, his massive arms crossed. He watched the crowd, the security, and a pale, terrified-looking woman near the soundboard, Ivy Tran. Cut. Tully was 50 yards away, inside an anonymous AV van. He was the ghost in the machine. On his main screen, he had the gala's official video feed. On his secondary screen, he had his overlay. A simple, brutal diagram of theft. He adjusted his headset. Brick, is Ivy in place? The MC is about to hand off. Cut. Eliza moved through the crowd. She was invisible in a crisp, black and white server's uniform. A silver tray balanced on her hand. The tray was empty, save for a single, tall glass, a Lyman Amargo, bitter and sharp. Her heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. She remembered the warmth of Santino's hand, the promise in his voice. "I'll carry it," to remind us both. On stage, Paxton beamed. "And now, to show our commitment, I invite you all to join me. Let's light up that donation board." Behind him, a 70-foot LED screen flickered, replacing the Shore Hope logo with a giant gleaming QR code. "I'll start us off," Paxton announced, pulling his own phone from his pocket. Backstage, the MC turned, Ivy Tran, her hand shaking so hard she almost dropped the microphone, stepped into his path. "Oh, sir," she stammered. "Mr. Paxton's audio. This one has a fresh battery. They asked me to swap it." The MC, distracted, barely looked. Fine, and he took the new mic. In the van, Tully's fingers flew. "We're live. The mic is ours." On stage, Paxton aimed his phone camera at the QR code. "Eliza! Now," Santino's voice said, low and clear in her hidden earpiece. She moved. "Mr. Paxton, excuse me, Mr. Paxton." He looked up, annoyed. Just as his phone focused on the code, Eliza stepped in front of him, holding up the tray. "Your lemon amargo, sir." He glanced at her, a dismissive flick of his eyes. "Not now." "He insisted, sir." Paxton tapped his screen. "Confirm." Tully hit his own key. "Bridge is active, pushing the overlay. Now." On the massive screen, the "Thank you for your donation" graphic never appeared. Instead, the screen flashed, resolving into a complex map, arrows, account numbers. At the top, in bold letters, Paxton Development. At the bottom, a name, Saltworks Collective. The crowd murmured, the salsa music faltered, the trumpeter hitting a sour note. Then, the final piece appeared, a new box titled Bureau of Maritime Commerce, with a list of names, the names of city commissioners, and the exact amounts donated to their private accounts. A woman in the front row gasped. A light, misty rain began to fall, as if summoned by the tension. Paxton stared at his phone, then at the screen. His benevolent mask dissolved. "Cut the feed," he roared into the microphone. "Cut it! Shut it down!" The audio died instantly. Tully had cut it, but the video feed was locked. Into the stunned, echoing silence. Santino Vega walked onto the stage. He wore no tuxedo, just a black suit. Perfectly cut, his white shirt open at the collar, he moved with a dancer's grace, picking up the second. Dead microphone from the podium. Tully, anticipating, switched the audio feed. Santino's voice boomed across the pier, calm and cold. He looked at Paxton. "Tien tot kong can len lut. Good money doesn't need to hide in the dark." All hell broke loose. Paxton screamed at his private security. "Get him! Get them all!" But a different threat emerged. Brett Klein, his face a mask of primal panic, burst from the side of the stage. He wasn't going for Santino. He was going for Eliza. "You?" he shrieked, grabbing her arm. "You did this!" His hand fumbled in his pocket. A switchblade clicked open. Eliza cried out, dropping her tray in a crash of breaking glass. Brett never got the knife up. Brick was a blur. He had crossed the stage in 2 strides. He didn't punch, he struck. His hand a rigid blade, chopping down on Brett's wrist. The sound was sharp, a sickening crack of bone. The knife clattered on the wet stage. As Brett howled, Maceo was there, spinning him, locking his arms in a clean, non-lethal takedown. Paxton's hired muscle, 2 men in ill-fitting blazers, finally unclipped their holsters. They hesitated, their eyes darting between Brick's massive frame and Maceo's cold efficiency. Then, new voices. "Move, move, Metropolitan Commerce Bureau. We're seizing all equipment." A team of men in official-looking blue windbreakers stormed the pier, their target clear the AV van. Paxton's face flooded with relief. This was his cleanup crew, his private police force. "Get that feed," their leader yelled, pointing at Tully's truck. In the van, Tully leaned back and laced his fingers behind his head. He watched them run. "Amateurs," he said into his comm. At that exact moment, dozens of phones in the audience, the ones that had been recording the speech, lit up, the feed, the full diagram, the bank transfers. Paxton's name was now streaming on every major social media platform, multicast from a dozen proxy servers. "You can't put the genie back in the bottle, boss," Tully murmured, hitting the key that wiped his own drives. Paxton saw it. He saw the faces of his wealthy friends, their phones held up, their expressions a mixture of horror and fascination. He was ruined. He didn't panic. He retreated. He backed off the stage, into the deepening rain, his gaze fixed on the dark, private docks at the end of the pier. He pulled out his phone, his thumb moving frantically. He was calling for an exit. Santino watched him go. He lowered the microphone. He pulled out his own phone. He typed a short, simple message to a number not in his contacts. "End it at the docks tonight." The true climax did not wait. It struck miles away. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of Valencia Primary's after-school program, Caleb North moved with the slick confidence of a man who believed his own lies. He held a crumpled, coffee-stained document. "Emergency authorization," he told the teenage program supervisor. "The mother's been detained. I'm Juniper North's father. I'm taking her." The supervisor hesitated. The paper looked official. "I cannot let you do that, Papi. Mrs." Lord stepped out of the office, her arms crossed. "This is not her father's pickup day." "Get out of my way, you old—" Caleb pushed past her, reaching for the door. He never made it. Maceo was just there. He did not touch Caleb. He simply stood in the doorway, a mountain in a chauffeur's cap. Caleb skidded to a halt. "This is kidnapping," Caleb blustered. "I have a court order." "That paper is a forgery. Mr. North," Maceo said, his voice a low, polite rumble. "And Mrs. Lords is a listed guardian. You are not." Maceo raised his personal cell phone. The video recording light a small red dot. "You are, however, being filmed attempting to remove a child against a guardian's wishes, using fraudulent documents. Smile for the judge." Caleb's face went white. He dropped the paper and fled. At the gala, chaos was a rising tide. Eliza was running, pushing through the stunned, wealthy crowd. Her server's uniform giving her a clear path, her burner phone was vibrating, a frantic, insistent buzz. She ducked behind a stack of amplifiers, her hands shaking as she answered the FaceTime. Maceo's face, then it flipped. Juniper, safe, sitting in Mrs. Lord's kitchen, eating a slice of apple. "Hi, Mommy, is the party loud?" The air punched out of Eliza's lungs, the dam of her fear, her rage, her exhaustion. It broke. A single choked sob tore from her throat. She cried for exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds of pure, agonizing relief. Then she wiped her eyes. The steel snapped back into place. "Hi, baby. I love you. Stay with Mrs. Lords. I'll be home soon. Love you." She ended the call and stood up, her spine straight. She had her proof. She had her child. Now, she just had to finish the war. She stepped back onto the pier just as the counteroffensive hit. A wave of synchronized buzzing. Every phone in the audience lit up with push notifications. Paxton's media machine, bought and paid for, was flooding the airwaves. Gala hijacked by notorious crime figure Santino Vega. Shadow boss uses charity event for gang warfare. Waitress implicated in Vega's criminal network. The narrative was flipping. The crowd, moments ago on her side, was now confused, fearful. They were looking at Santino, who stood near the stage with open suspicion. Eliza saw the shift. She saw the doubt. She saw Santino's name being dragged through the mud to cover Paxton's tracks, and she felt the last ounce of her fear burn away, replaced by a cold, pure fury. She walked back onto the stage, past the shattered glass of her tray. She picked up the microphone Santino had dropped. "My name is Eliza Navarro," she said, her voice amplified, cut through the rain and the whispers. It did not shake. "I'm a waitress. Here, at Azucar and Lime. I'm not a criminal." She looked out at the sea of pale, wealthy faces, at the flashing cell phones. "I am the one who saw the receipts. I am the one who saw the fake fees. I saw my manager steal from tourists, and when I said no, he bruised my arm and threatened my job." She held up her arm, the bandage a stark white square under the stage lights. "Mister, Paxton says Santino Vega is a shadow boss. I don't know what he is. I know he was the one who stopped it, and I know Wesley Paxton is the one who profits." She pointed to the frozen diagram on the screen. "You see that? That's your donation. That's my tip. That's the money I need to pay for my daughter's daycare. I am a server. I saw the receipts being stolen. Tonight." Her voice rose, fierce and true. "I am returning them." A new sound, not from the gala guests. It came from the edges, from the other servers, the valets, the busboys. Then it was joined by a few people in the crowd, men and women in simpler clothes, the owners of the bodegas. The proprietors of the restaurants Paxton had been bleeding dry. They held their phones up, not in fear, but as weapons, their own live streams. "Enough," one man yelled. "Ya basta, enough." The tide had turned, irrevocably. In the chaos, Brett Klein, his wrist broken and dangling, tried to slink away. He scuttled past the soundboard, only to find Ivy Tran standing in his path. She was shaking from head to toe, pale as a ghost, but she did not move. "Get out of my way, Ivy," he spat. "No," she whispered. He raised his good hand to shove her. Before he could, Brick was there. He put one massive hand on Brett's shoulder, a gentle, paternal grip that stopped him cold. Brick nodded to two civilian port security guards who had been watching. "This one belongs to you." He handed Brett over. In his van, Tully saw the next attack. A mass email blasted from a secure server. Immediate closure notice. Suncoast Licensing Authority. Tully laughed. "Nice try." His fingers blurred over the keys. He traced the server's IP. Virtual, based in Estonia. Paid for by a credit card linked to Paxton Development's offshore account. He took a screenshot and posted it on the same social media channels the crowd was watching, with a simple caption, flagged in red, "Warning fake agency Suncoast is a shell. Paxton's threats are not official." Santino had not waited. He was moving, a shadow in the rain, through the maze of containers toward the private docks. He knew where Paxton was running. He rounded a stack of cargo netting. A large man in a black blazer, Paxton's personal bodyguard, stepped out. He had been waiting. He moved fast, a heavy, metallic object in his fist. Santino met him, the sound of the first impact a dull, wet thud. Eliza saw it from the stage. The two men, silhouettes, locked in a brutal, silent fight. Santino was good, but the other man was a brute, and he had a weapon. Eliza looked around, frantic. She saw it, a yellow, battered forklift, keys still in the ignition. She didn't think. She ran. She scrambled into the driver's seat, her server's apron catching on the lever. She jammed the key, and the engine roared to life. The bodyguard heard it. He looked up, distracted. It was the opening Santino needed, but before he could take it, Eliza was moving. She slammed the forklift into gear and stomped on the accelerator, one hand mashing the horn. The high-pitched, frantic beep, beep echoed off the steel. The bodyguard jumped back. The forklift, with Eliza at the helm, slid to a stop in the wet, its two massive steel tines forming a perfect cage, separating Santino from his attacker. The engine idled, loud and smoking. Eliza, soaked, her hair plastered to her face, leaned out of the cage. She stared through the rain at the bodyguard, her eyes blazing. She yelled, her voice raw, "I will crush your dirty game! You threaten my daughter!" The bodyguard looked at this mad woman on a forklift. He looked at Santino, who was now standing, breathing heavily, a dark stain on his white shirt. He looked at the chaos, the approaching port security. He dropped the metal pipe. It clanged on the pavement. He raised his hands. Paxton was already on his speedboat. The engine roared, a deep-throated growl of power. He was untying the last line. Santino looked at him. He didn't yell. He didn't run. He just raised his hand and made a sharp, clear signal toward the mouth of the bay. "Omega Pier. Curtain call there," he said, too quiet for anyone but himself to hear. The pier was a wreckage of abandoned champagne flutes and overturned chairs. The rain had washed the drama from the air, leaving only a cold, damp quiet. In the gray light just before dawn, Maceo pulled the sedan to the curb in front of a shuttered Azucar and Lime. Santino turned to Eliza in the back seat. The adrenaline was gone, leaving her pale and visibly exhausted. "You're done," he said. The words were not a suggestion. They were an order. "You've done enough." He watched her hands, which were twisting the damp server's apron in her lap. "You have the video of Caleb trying to take Juniper. That is what you need for the court. You have your proof." He gestured toward the dark, silent city. "Paxton is my problem now. Let my people handle him. The rest is for me. Eliza stopped twisting the cloth. She looked up, and the exhaustion in her eyes was overlaid by a sharp, clear focus. She shook her head. He's running because of what we did tonight, she said, her voice quiet but inflexible. But he'll just set up his scam in another restaurant, in another city. The Metropolitan Commerce Bureau will protect him. The police won't touch him. The only thing he is afraid of is the light. Our light. It is not your job to hold that light, Eliza. It is too dangerous. It's always been dangerous, she countered, her voice gaining a low, resonant strength. It was dangerous when I had half a gallon of milk in my fridge. It was dangerous when Brett Klein put his hands on me. It was dangerous when that man threatened my daughter over the phone. You can't send your men to speak for me. Not for this. She met his gaze, and he saw the woman from the dock, the woman on the forklift. No one can replace the truth of the little person. I started this. I am finishing it. She said, the words a creed. He saw it was useless. She was immovable. She did not go home to sleep. At 6 a.m., she was at a 24-hour copy shop. At 7, she was waiting on the steps of the family court building. She filed her unilateral emergency petition. She did not use Santino's lawyers. She filed it herself. She attached the notarized affidavit from Mrs. Lords. She attached the video file from Maceo's phone, showing Caleb North attempting to abduct Juniper with a forged authorization. She attached Tully's screenshot, tracing the Suncoast Licensing Authority to Paxton's offshore account. She was connecting the dots for the judge, building a firewall of absolute truth around her daughter. That night, Azucar and Lime was dark, but it was not empty. Eliza had made the calls, one by one. They came, slipping in through the back kitchen door. The elderly woman who ran the Cuban bodega on Ochoa Street, the two brothers from the fish market, the proprietor of the Haitian bakery, a dozen small business owners, all of whom had seen the mysterious QR codes appear on their systems, all of whom had been bled dry by administrative fees and payment violations. Eliza stood at the head of the main table in the dark dining room. They call us little people, she said, her voice echoing in the quiet. They think we're too scattered, too tired, and too poor to fight back. They think we're too scared of men like Paxton. She looked at their faces. They're wrong. She spread a paper on the table, a community petition. It was a class action affidavit, attesting to the digital shakedown. They weren't just witnesses anymore. They were an army. They signed, one after another, their names a new kind of weapon. The quiet restaurant had become a command center. Miles away, in a glass tower overlooking the bay, Santino stood in the dark. He stared at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. His face was streaked with the night's rain and sweat. He could see the dark, ugly bruise along his ribs where the bodyguard's pipe had grazed him. He saw his father's eyes looking back. The shadow boss. The monster in the dark. The man Eliza's ex-husband claimed he was. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a contact he had not called in 3 years. Marco, his younger brother. The one who had walked away from the family, from the life. The one who had chosen the light. Marco answered on the 4th ring, his voice wary, distant. Santino. A long, heavy pause. Santino watched his own reflection. I'm about to do something, he said, his voice rough. Something public, something that... It changes the family name, for good or for ill. He took a breath, the confession tearing out of him. If I step into the light, will you still call me brother? The silence on the line was a chasm, filled with years of unspoken arguments and accusations. Santino could hear the faint sound of a child laughing in the background, a life he could not touch. Go, Marco said finally, his voice thick. Just go. The line clicked. Santino closed his eyes, the reflection disappearing. The final pieces moved into place. Tully, from his van, uploaded the Paxton diagram, the lists from the silver box, and the new community petition to 3 different decentralized servers. It was indestructible. He then created a new, simple public QR code. Brick was not muscle tonight. He was a messenger. He printed 500 flyers. He walked, block by block, to every major local news outlet, every independent blogger, every radio station. He didn't say a word. He just handed them the flyer. It contained only the QR code, the code linked to the server, the entire case, the truth, for anyone brave enough to download it. Eliza returned to the restaurant before dawn. It was quiet. She took a piece of paper from her apron. It was a copy of the final page of her declaration to the court, written in her own clear, strong hand. My name is Eliza Navarro. I choose to work clean. I choose to raise my child with the truth. This restaurant is a house of truth. She taped it to the inside of the front glass door, facing out, a manifesto for the whole city to see. She turned, and he was there. He was standing by the prep station, as if he had materialized from the shadows. He must have come in the back. He didn't speak. He just held out a long, cloth-wrapped object. She took it. It was heavy. She unrolled the cloth. It was a chef's knife, perfectly balanced, German steel, with a handle of dark, polished wood. It felt warm, an extension of her own arm. As she angled it toward the pale emergency light, she saw the gleam of etching on the flat of the blade. For the truth, it was a gift, a promise. It was not a weapon, it was a tool. They stood there, in the kitchen that had seen everything. The assault, the fear, the kiss. The rain had stopped. The city was holding its breath, waiting for the sun. They were behind the main counter, where she worked every day. The distance between them was exactly one breath. She was acutely aware of his hand, resting on the stainless steel. His fingers were inches from hers. He did not reach for her. She did not reach for him. The air was thick with the unspoken. The battle was not over. Paxton was still on the water. The final confrontation at Omega Pier was still to come. But in this quiet, green-lit kitchen, they made a silent promise. Her gaze dropped to his hand, then back to his eyes. His gaze did the same. After this, when this is done, we will talk about us. Omega Pier was a black hole at the edge of the city. The tide was low, the air thick and still. Paxton's speedboat idled at the end of the dock, a low, nervous rumble. His trap was set. The fake Bureau of Maritime Commerce windbreakers were fanned out, creating a perimeter, ready to seize any evidence that appeared. They were waiting for Santino. They were not prepared for the high, whining buzz from above. Tully's drone was a dragonfly in the dark, its high-definition lens bathing the scene in infrared. It was broadcasting live. Santino walked out of the shadows, alone, onto the pier. He stopped 20 yards from the boat. "Paxton!" he called out, his voice carrying easily over the idling engine. Paxton stepped out onto the deck, his white tuxedo shirt a stark contrast to the night. He laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Look at you, Vega, the noble ghost. You're no different from me. You were born in the dark. Then let's see how you do in the light." A new voice. "Eliza." She stepped from behind a large shipping container, and the boat's harsh deck lights hit her. She was not in her uniform. She was in her own clothes, her jeans and the worn jacket, and she was carrying the silver metallic case from the warehouse. The live stream is pushing 150,000 viewers. Paxton, and it's climbing. She said, her voice clear and carrying, amplified by a small mic Tully had given her. Paxton's eyes darted from Eliza to Santino, and then to the dark perimeter, searching for his escape. He saw only his own men. He made his choice. He lunged for the boat's controls. "Get me out of here!" But the trap was not for him. It was for his escape. High above, in the cab of a gantry crane, Brick pulled a massive lever. A 50-ton steel container, held invisibly in the dark, descended with a groan, blocking the mouth of the slip. On the pier, Maceo stepped out, raised a pneumatic launcher, and fired. A grappling line shot out, hooking the boat's stern. Paxton jammed the throttle. The twin engines roared, churning the water to foam. The boat, tethered by Maceo's line and blocked by Brick's crane, lurched, spun in a violent circle, and slammed into the pier. The drone captured the entire pathetic maneuver. In the chaos, a figure darted from the shadows. Caleb North. He had followed the crowd, seen the case, and saw his one last desperate chance. He lunged at Eliza, grabbing for the silver box. "Give me that." He was fast, but Mrs. Lourdes was faster. She stepped out from behind Maceo, her own cell phone held high. She wasn't capturing video. She was on FaceTime, part of the main live stream. The entire audience saw Caleb's contorted face as he tried to wrestle the evidence from Eliza. "We see you, pig!" she yelled. Maceo ended it, grabbing Caleb by the collar and lifting him off his feet. The community, watching the stream, exploded in a howl of digital rage. Paxton panicked. His boat smashed, made his last call. "Suncoast, get Suncoast down here. Seize this evidence. Seize them all." And they came. A crowd of people, moving as one, marched onto Omega Pier. They weren't police. They were the bodega owners, the bakers, the servers, the tourists who had read the flyers. They carried hand-painted banners. "We scan the truth." They didn't shout. They just walked, fanning out, until the pier was a forest of raised cell phone cameras, their lights a galaxy of new, inescapable stars. Paxton was trapped in a 360-degree spotlight of his own making. This was Eliza's stage now. She opened the silver case. She pulled out the hard drive and a single sheet of paper. She stepped up to the microphone she had worn from the gala. "Wesley Paxton," she read, and Tully made sure her voice boomed across the water. "You faked a donation of $50,000 to the Shore Hope Gala. You transferred that same amount through the Saltworks Collective to Commissioner Alan Davies of the Bureau of Maritime Commerce." "Lies!" Paxton screamed. "You faked a donation of $80,000, Eliza continued, her voice rising, "and transferred it to Commissioner Maria Flores." She read every name, every stolen amount, every bribe. Paxton broke. He roared, lunging past his bodyguards, his hand outstretched, not to hit her, but to grab the microphone, to silence the truth. He never reached it. Santino stepped in his path. He did not raise a fist. He did not fight. He simply blocked him, a solid, immovable object, and he held out a single piece of paper. "Wesley Paxton," Santino said, his voice cold and official. "You're being served." Paxton stared at the document. It was a civil seizure warrant issued by the Interstate Financial Crimes Commission, citing the public petition and digital evidence filed by Eliza's community task force. Then, the final sound, sirens, real ones. A joint force of civilian port security and the very real, if temporarily funded by Santino Federal Financial Crimes Unit, swarmed the pier. It was over. Paxton, his face slack with disbelief, put his hands behind his back. The port security cuffed Brett, his arm in a sling. Maceo handed a weeping Caleb North over to two officers, citing the forgery and the attempted abduction, the empire of ghosts, built on stolen QR codes, dissolved in the flashing red and blue lights. The crowd erupted in cheers. Eliza watched them take Paxton away. The strength that had held her up, the adrenaline, the rage, it all evaporated. Her knees buckled. Santino was there. He caught her before she fell. She collapsed against him, her face buried in his jacket, her hands gripping his shirt. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her up, his hand stroking her hair. She was shaking, a deep, rattling tremor of release. They stood there for a long time, two survivors, surrounded by the applause of the city they had saved. His cheek was pressed against her hair, wet with rain and salt. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice broken. He held her tighter. "You saved yourself." He whispered back, his voice thick. "I just opened the door." The epilogue was written in the quiet light of day. The family court judge, reviewing the video of Caleb in the forged documents, granted Eliza sole and permanent custody of Juniper. Azucar and Lime reopened 2 weeks later. It was no longer a property. It was a co-op, owned and operated by its staff. Ivy Tran was the new manager. The QR codes were rebuilt, their back-end code open source, audited by Tully and the newly formed community of small business owners. Santino Vega, for the first time, used his real name on a legal document. He dissolved his father's shadowy holding companies. He established the Juniper Fund, a fully transparent, legitimate foundation to support underfunded local daycares. The books were open, the money was clean. He came to her apartment one evening, not as a boss, not as a shadow, but as a man. He asked her if she and Juniper would have dinner with him. She said yes. Later, they stood on her small balcony. The wind was gentle, carrying only the smell of the sea. They leaned against each other, his shoulder against hers, their hands finding each other in the twilight, fingers lacing together. A comfortable, easy silence. He turned, his hand moving to cup her cheek. He looked at her, his eyes clear. All the shadows gone. He kissed her, a slow, warm, and deeply personal kiss that held no fire, only promise. It was not the desperate kiss in the rain. It was the kiss of a beginning. He rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow is ours," he whispered, in the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly appreciate you spending your time with Eliza and Santino. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from in the world. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Please, if you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It helps more than you know. And if you really want to support the channel, smash that hype button to help this story be heard by even more people.